Today, Max Weinbach posted on his Twitter what appears to be the schematics for the upcoming iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max models. It looks like we're getting that eye punch cutout for the Face ID and the camera. The earpiece is going to be in the same position where it's out of the way of the screen and it's up there by the bezel at the top of the phone. There is going to be the Face ID, which is going to be that main black bar in the eye punch cutout, and then there's going to be the camera, which is the dot for the eye. It's pretty late in the game for Apple to be removing the notch on the iPhone. So at this point, it's far too late to copy anybody else. So that means that the hole punch is out of here. The moving camera for what I think is the Oppo Find phone, definitely not in the picture. So they've got to do something completely different than everybody else, which leads them to put the eye back in iPhone. The second main reason is that the newer iPhones have been taking a lot of design inspiration from some of the older iPhones, as you might have noticed with the flat edges instead of the curved ones. So, with that being said, I'm thinking that this eye punch cutout is meant to look more like the speaker grill and the camera from earlier iPhones, like the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 5, and basically all the phones that had that little line and then dot. Looking at the Face ID on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it looks like the Face ID components are a little bit closer together when compared to the Face ID on the iPhone 14 Pro. I don't think this means that there's going to be any improved Face ID for the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I think this is just to keep it to where the perspective on the phone screen is approximately the same. So I'm thinking this is just because the 14 Pro Max is so much bigger that it leaves the Face ID components to be closer together, because that distance when compared to the full width of the phone is a lot smaller than it is on the 14 Pro, where that distance makes up a greater amount of the screen. Moving on to the back of the phone, it looks like the camera module is not changing a whole lot, or at least not as much as I expected. We've seen the incremental increase of the camera module from the 11 Pro, the 12 Pro, and now the 13 Pro, where the camera module is pretty massive at this point. The schematics show the same 3 camera system, with the flash being on the top right and the microphone being just below that past the telephoto lens. On the schematics, there is not a cutout for the LiDAR. Taking my own measurements with my trusty ruler, it appears that the camera module is not getting that much bigger in terms of the length and width. However, the lines on the schematics only go to that edge region, and I'm not really sure what that outside rim is, but I would have to assume that it's the slope that slopes up the camera, so it's not just this like really jarring flat edge on the edge of it. But from my measurements, the length and width is about the same, and the cameras appear to be about the same size. This brings me back to another rumor that we had where the camera bump was going away, and the camera module was going to be flush with the back of the phone. I immediately thought this was not going to happen, mainly because that would lead to us having a very, very thick iPhone, and I don't think that's something that they would really go for. But a thicker phone does mean that there may be room for an even larger battery. In the schematics, it shows that the thickness of the phone is 7.85 millimeters, which is 0.2 millimeters thicker than the current phones. This is something that I think has to happen because a new iPhone wouldn't be a new iPhone without better cameras. I think that they did this on purpose because I don't think Apple wants people to realize that the camera bump is getting bigger and bigger as cameras get better and better. So to off-put that, the phone is going to get 0.2 millimeters thicker. The other thing that I kind of pick up on in the schematics is that the lenses may be the slightest bit wider. I'm not really sure how big everything is on there, but the rim around the lens seems to be a little bit smaller than the current rim around the 13 Pro lenses. Moving to the bottom of the phone, it looks like everything is pretty much the same. It looks like we're going to have that same speaker on the right side grill, the microphones, and then those like fake speaker grills over on the left. As for what goes in between those is a port, and this port is something I'm assuming is going to be a lightning port, so I'm pretty sure USB-C on the iPhone is just never happening. Let's reel it back into what this video is really about, and that's putting the eye back in iPhone. So why do I think that is? Something that people kind of forgot about over time is that we used to be able to see the battery percentage all the time. And now we have just grown accustomed to swiping down from that bottom right corner on newer iPhones. But I think this is something that they'll add back with the new screen real estate because there will be just a little bit more room, so it kind of seems like it should be able to go back up there. And this is something that I think is also a really good comeback for features that people really like. But this is all conjecture because this is just a couple of pictures that I found on Twitter. So you let me know what you think is going to happen, and I'll be really excited to read those comments.